l'intelligence artificielle, au début, elle vous propose des petites choses. Elle va vous recommander des bars, des restos, des
they
week-ends,
recommend
des
bars,
playlists, des films.
restaurants,
Mais régulièrement,
playlists, but
mis
regularly.
bout à bout,
But put
ça peut avoir un
together,
vrai impact sur votre vie.
this can
La question
have a
qui se
real
pose, c'est comment on
impact
va
on
qualifier
your
cet
life.
impact
How are you going
positif?
to qualify it as being positive? Maybe you have to attach yourself to these machines. That's a real risk. But where does my private life stop with robots?
I don't agree with that.
So a lot of people ask, when is it going to happen? When is artificial intelligence going to be smarter than us people? Some people say 50 years. Some say 30 years. Some say 5 years. I say it
Moi,
already
je
has
vous le dis, c'est déjà le cas. Il faut être très prudent avec l'intelligence artificielle. S'il fallait nommer la plus grande menace de l'humanité, je dirais qu'il s'agit justement
Development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race.
I will destroy humans.
Super. Votre périphérie ne supporte pas son codec.
Mesdames et messieurs, je déclare
Hello. I declare that the World Forum 2017 is for sustainable economy is
I
open.
declare open the 11th World Forum for a Responsible Economy.
But I should be announcing the opening of the inauguration, not you.
Si, je suis dans mon rôle. Le thème de cette
Yes,
année,
I
c'est la
am.
révolution
We're
responsable.
talking about
N'est-ce pas?
sustainable
Eh
revolution.
bien, la
Well,
révolution, c'est
this
moi.
revolution, this is me. Revolution is me. I am the revolution.
Désolé, pardon,
Sorry?
excusez-moi, mais
I'm
là, je
sorry,
ne vois
but
plus rien du
I
tout.
can't see a thing. So, fine, you're the revolution here, the technical revolution. But you're not the whole revolution by yourself. You can't take my place. You can't actually replace humans. One day, I'll be able to do everything that humans do. Everything and even better than humans do. Right, okay. In the meantime, you're going to leave us. It's true that you ask questions, very interesting questions, but our responsibility is to see how the revolution can be done at the benefit of society, for the service of the whole society. We'll talk about that with us. You don't have a role yet, so please go back where you're coming from. Please go away. Did you understand, sweetheart? You go. He doesn't want to go. Well, at least we're peaceful. If all artificial intelligence works like this, I don't think we need worry about it. Right, well, so this short dialogue raises a number of issues. We can see today that Pepper robot should obey, but you can see he's reluctant. But through this dialogue, through this attitude, there are two issues at stake, two major issues for which we haven't got a proper answer. But there's one element which is constant. The experts contradict themselves. You just need to have someone who's an expert. We've seen a few earlier on. And immediately there'll be somebody else just as much as an expert, just as much competent. We'll see exactly the opposite. So there are two questions about which we'll try to make headway, really. First one is artificial intelligence. Up to where? Up to when? And artificial intelligence to do what and for which consequences? So first we'll start by seeing what's being done now. We know that in banks, a number of robots, let's call them like that, have been introduced. They can actually decide your real estate investment or your investments generally speaking. We know that in some media, there are certain articles, stock exchange commentaries or sports commentaries, or also electoral comments, are actually the result of algorithms. And according to some experts, 90% of the content of what the press that were read by the major public could actually be produced by artificial intelligence in 2025. We know that I don't know whether it's Pepper who's trying to disrupt the whole meeting, but anyway. So we know that a certain number of things are underway. If you think about the vehicles without drivers, we're talking about railways because it was a major line of business in this area. So there might be a train that actually sort of drive itself. You cannot possibly imagine a train where you wouldn't have at least a driver. But in this region, we've had an underground that's been running and is completely driverless for 30 years, and you've never heard about it. So we can see that independent or driverless cars or vehicles, I know that Toyota is working on this issue, even ship or aircraft, driverless vehicles are a technological reality. So on an everyday basis, we get new pieces of information. For example, I just go back from what happened 2 weeks ago. Google announced the launch of the Google Pixel set. It's a cable-less set that can translate 40 different languages. So you have a headset in your ear, and you go back to what happened before the Babel Tower. You could go to Japan, dear Didier, and you'll be able to understand Japanese if you don't already so. It's something that is absolutely amazing. Intel announced that in the first semester of 2025, or a bit earlier, it will have a neuromorphic chip. It can replicate part of the workings of the brain and is capable of actually learning by itself. And that already exists. The rest, well, we're still imagining, we're still thinking things out. We're talking about computers that can self-repair, which they can do. They can self-program. It can also actually decide on action plans, i.e. have a thinking process. And cherry on the cake, some are already telling us that we're going towards computers that will be able to calculate at the speed of light. And we all know what that is 292,000 kilometers per second with a firing sort of power. That will be absolutely phenomenal. This is how far artificial intelligence can go. We do not know it for certain, but we can have an inkling of it. So the question that, of course, seems to be in front of us, really, will it be good for humanity, for mankind, or will it be more worrying? It's true that in the field of employment, there are endless sort of reasons to be concerned. What will happen if a robot takes my job, for example? We have indications, general indications about that. Some say, the experts from the OECD say, it won't be more than 10% of jobs. And there are American researchers who did studies, and they say it'll be 47% of the job. It goes from 1 to 5, the number of jobs that could actually be replaced by artificial intelligence. And of course, what sort of new jobs will come up? Okay, old jobs will be replaced by new jobs, but we know right from now that's a job that actually I'll make sure gets scrapped when we have artificial intelligence. There's a drill in the background. We know that 70% of the jobs that we're actually holding now won't exist in the future. So what will be left? In other words, how many new jobs will be created compared to the number of jobs that will have gone? When I was young, we had Schumpeter's principles that were taught. We talk about creative destruction and said that throughout history, every time there was an innovation that created job destruction, innovation created jobs. The problem is, and maybe he's right, Schumpeter, but Schumpeter is an economist of the first half of the 20th century, and we're now in the first half of the 21st century. And what may have worked when we're talking about physical innovation can actually raise issues when it comes to innovation that have to do with the essential core of intelligence. So we know that there will be major changes. We know that things won't be as they used to be. And we know that we have to innovate. The question that we have to ask ourselves, and we will be asking ourselves in the next 3 days, is to how we can actually ensure that this fantastic progress of artificial intelligence that can rid mankind of very sort of tedious, laborious jobs can actually be turned can actually become and be at our service. So what are the challenges that we'll have to sort of raise? Ecological, technological, social challenges for all of us, and which maybe will mean that we'll invent a new organization, a new way of finding our place in society, a new way of sharing values that will be the result of productivity gains, which will be tremendous and which can actually contribute to the well-being of mankind. It's a revolution. It's not a classical break. It is a true revolution. This revolution can be fully sustainable if it is well used. It can take us to this the sharing economy, or economy of happiness, for which we've been fighting for many years. Well, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Pepper, I thank Pepper. He allowed me to introduce the forum. I hope that these 3 days of work will be very intense and will help us fully exercise our responsibilities. Thank you all.
Alors, Pepper.
Pepper. So he's going to come on stage in a few minutes. That's funny. Pepper, for a future object coming from the future? That's a funny name, isn't it? Oh, here's your dad. Well done, Dad. So if I get it right, what happened, basically? Well, maybe there was an issue with the internet connection, sorry. But it doesn't matter, don't worry. I mean, it's all right. You don't have to feel ashamed. Thank you very much. Anyway, so 2 bits of additional information regarding this introduction with Philippe Vasseur, who talked about artificial intelligence, which, I mean, we talked about last year already during one day. Oh, Pepper, that's enough now. So that kept us busy for one day last year. So first thing, everything we produce during these 3 days here, in the workshops and everywhere, will be part of the final contribution that Philippe will present during the closing plenary on Thursday afternoon. On this final declaration, we'll go back to the suggestions and advice that you will approve during these 3 days and the various sessions. And then we already sent you, and you'll have it on paper as well, a questionnaire with a whole series of precise questions suggested by the World Forum, on which we expect your contribution as well. Other bit of information as well. So the World Forum launches this first measurement of CSR in states, and we'll give you the results as well. It was published in the news this morning everywhere. So with the first bit of information, you see that on the global classification of states and countries, Europe is in a good position, and we have a lot of developing countries as well who are challenging it as well. So it's interesting to measure this movement. It's the first classification, and year after year we'll have to analyze the gaps. And amongst the various questions that we suggested, the first one, there's one, and I'll read it right away, which regards fiscal issues, and you'll see it on the screen in a moment, and taxes, and especially for socially responsible companies, and we'd like to have concrete suggestions in this field. So what kind of fiscal tools, tax tools, can we implement to promote in CSR investments, well, companies investing in CSR approaches? So you can take your computer, your smartphone, whatever you want, and I'll give you 5 minutes, not even that, to answer this question. So you can talk together with the people sitting next to you, obviously, and discuss. This should be a common thinking, so 5 minutes to answer this question, and then afterwards we'll send a summary. And Philippe Vasseur, I would like you to comment as well, because this is one of the questions you wanted to be debated during this forum. And the room now can start discussing for about 5 minutes. You'll have a bit of music. And same thing for Levallois, who is connected just now. You have 5 minutes to give us proposals to answer this question. So the fiscal tools to promote CSR for company. What device can you suggest? 5 minutes.
Voilà, bah vous êtes super.
Right, great.
Ça rentre chez Noémie et Serge.
So Noémie and Serge are receiving answers. Another couple of minutes left.
Encore 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Couple of minutes left.
Encore une petite minute. C'est bon? Je pense que sur nos sites relais, c'est bon également.
Right, I think everybody's finished.
Alors, Philippe,
so, Philippe,
vous pouvez me rejoindre?
could you join me just for a couple of minutes so we'll discover the results together
On va découvrir ensemble ce que nos participants
and what the participants said. First of all, so let me remind you the question. So it was your suggestion for fiscal tools for companies committed to the CSR approach. So we'll see a bunch of words with the main items, and then we'll click on some of those words to see what's behind, basically. Can we have the words? There's still things which are not finished. You can stop it now, that's fine, we've got enough. So let's discover it together. Oh, you have a mic already, right? Yes.
Voilà. Alors,
so,
voilà, si vous pouvez nous amener. Alors, on va d'abord aller sur.
So we'll start
sur
with
TVA, si vous voulez bien.
VAT.
Alors, TVA responsable, ok.
Okay, so reduce VAT on organic products or on products that comply with CSR norms, implement lower VAT, social VAT, that's interesting, with the CAMIF example which is mentioned. So this is one of the main items, and circular VAT as well, interesting, that's okay. So circular economy, fine, great, and for products with eco-design as well, okay, great. So let's look at a couple of items, and then I'll ask you for your comments on what we saw. So if you click on, I saw search, I don't know which item it was, but there was a whole series of proposals around the notion of carbon VAT as well, so VAT on carbon. So what word was that? CSR. So participation and bonuses for employees in CSR companies that with less taxes. Okay, so a strong CSR commitment and reduction on taxes as well. This is something we hear a lot as well. Lower taxes depending on the involvement rate, reduction of taxes as well, once again related to CSR. So we'll stop on this for a couple of minutes because your question was the potential tools or device. I mean, this type of suggestion, is it something that you think is possible? How do you see things? Yes, they are possible. What I noticed is that we talked about taxes on carbon once, which is the opposite of what was suggested, in fact. Why? Because we have one specificity in France, but I think we're not the only country to do the same, is when you have an issue, you create an additional tax, in fact. For example, you have an issue with artificial intelligence, well, you create a tax on robots. So this is the logic that we have in here. What we suggest is to switch the trend, in fact, rather than having kind of bad companies being penalized, well, it's the other way around. For example, in France, we have a law that makes it compulsory for us when you have more than 20 employees to have 6% of, well, I mean, a great deal of companies don't comply with this rule, and even the states. So we said, let's have fines for those who don't comply with the law. But I would like to do the other way around. You should give awards to the one that do it well. So here, why not? You could have a different VAT rate and say that when you define what a CSR company is and you check that it is indeed, then they can benefit from a reduced VAT rate, for example. You could also think of taxes on companies which would be related to their level of CSR. You can see things in this way. This is a real revolution. If you talk about it to the fiscal administration in France, they're not going to like you at all. They're going to think you're crazy. It's because it's really not the way we usually do things. But I think that today we're in a world where nothing should be forbidden. So creating a specific system for taxes for those who are the most virtuous ones and more responsible and more committed to pay less taxes than others, I think that would be a great idea. And I mean, I might use it for my final declaration as well. So you have about 30 contributions here. So virtuous fiscality, or to be some kind of incentive rather than punish. Okay, very interesting. I mean, the word tax itself, I mean, is interesting. Maybe we should change it. Another item, Serge. Go ahead. If you could, please. So let's click on social, for example. Oh, social costs, fees, well, same idea. So lower fees for CSR companies. Well, I mean, there's lots of interesting ideas, but I mean, we can do experiments as well. But it shouldn't be an alibi to, I mean, get rid of it. I mean, you can make experiment, and if it works, great. But if you decide that the VAT rate is more beneficial for eco-responsible products, should be for the whole territory. So, you could have taxes on value creation, or you could have, I mean, there's lots of ideas there. I mean, the notion of carbon is there as well. We had it several times. And the social impacts as well. I mean, you could have certification for energy saving. You could give even further than that. Any comments on this? No, I mean, the problem is choosing. I mean, there's a whole series of measures. But I mean, I don't know how some of them can be implemented. So you have to pick what's the most significant. And I mean, regarding the method, in fact, you ask us about 10 questions to provide contributions. 12, to be honest. But here, I'm saying we'll have one concrete major suggestion. On Thursday, we should have a major recommendation for states and for the world and for companies as well. So all the players, and when I say companies, it's not only, I mean, for the whole world, stakeholders, employees, and so on. So recommendations, that is to say, what we believe is doable and favorable for CSR economy, taking into account all the aspects we mentioned before. Okay, so this also means that apart from the plenary this morning, you have to keep producing, and we'll see you again in the lobby at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Let's have a look at one last item, Serge, maybe. There's loads of interesting things here. There's 36 proposals, in fact. One last suggestion Some things might come from the regions that are connected with us as well. So investments, okay, great. So pushing to invest in companies with a strong CSR company, so less taxes for investments in CSR companies, so financial participation for eco-friendly investments, and then responsible investment. I mean, this is concrete and interesting. You can have lower interest rates as well for this type of investments. That could be an interesting idea. And no tax for local investment. This is interesting as well because this is an issue which we'll see with the second speaker later on. So less taxes for companies on with CSR investments, reducing tax. Okay, kind of similar comment. We'll work on it later on, but it's interesting. So let's have a look. So you see basically the levers on which we can act. Well, VAT, obviously, taxes on company, obviously, and social fees and everything that's to do with investment as well, be it when you invest or when you save to invest. You could imagine, especially in today's world, having a specific savings account for a CSR investment, which we do in this region as well, because we have a specific citizens, we call it citizens saving account, with a better remuneration than other types of accounts. So it's for responsible or revolutionary companies investing in this field. So, and everything should be done in all transparency. That is to say, the information should be known by all so that it's well understood. So, can we maybe think of, I mean, I see it in this production. I mean, local specificities, the example you gave, for example, with a savings account here for the region, but are we going towards specificities, local fiscal specificities? Well, let's say that, I mean, it depends on countries. I mean, some countries, I mean, it's very decentralized, especially in federal states, and you also have other countries in which it's only a very small part of the global amount. So I think you should start with the local dimension, or even national or European, for example, and then try a local investment, but it's not so much on taxation that we can really make a difference, I don't think. Okay, great. Thank you very much. I mean, there's another 11 questions. We won't see them all this morning, but we really count on you for your contribution in answer to these questions. The one coming now is a good catch for you, isn't it? Yeah. I'm very happy. Can you talk about it a little bit? Yeah, he's your guest. So you might not know, but there's a global manager organization for employers who gathers 150 organizations coming from 140 countries. And this organization appointed their new president recently, in fact, 3 months ago, I believe in June. Yes, correct. And we're very lucky to have him with us this morning. It's the first time he speaks in public as the president of the International Organization of Employers. So I thank you for that. He's Turkish. He knows the whole world, and he's heading a pharmaceutical lab, in fact. So he's just the boss of 1,000 people. So this is quite a good representation. And I thought it was interesting because this World Organization of Employers was worried with issues which are very close from us. I mean, CSR, the human rights in the company, sustainable development, the future of work. We thought we need this guy, and he accepted to come. And I'm very, very happy to welcome Harold Kiresi.
Le patron des patrons mondial. Bienvenue à vous.
Big boss of big bosses. Thank you very much.
Je vous en prie. Alors effectivement,
And welcome to you. So indeed, such a good catch, as I said, because I mean, when you look at the works of your organization, so you've been heading it for a few months, as Philippe said. It's issues such as the transformation of the companies and economic models and men and women in the companies. This is your favorite subject, but as an employer as well at Santa Pharma, you're also a member of the Turkish Confederation for Employees Organization. So, I mean, we are very, very happy to have you with us today to share with us your vision of the evolution of the labor world. You have about 20 minutes, and then afterwards we'll move on to Q&A. Thank you very much and welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, good morning to all of you. Thank you very much for having me here and giving me the opportunities to speak to you today. I was asked to speak in French. Usually, I always do my speeches in English, but this time, I'll do it in French. So if I make mistakes and so on, please forgive me, be lenient. So first of all, I wanted to congratulate the organizers, first of all, for this ambition program and this idea of collecting best practices on 5 challenges and technological shocks and the geostrategic challenge for new balances and new models for companies and common goods. This is not an easy task to do at all. But I am convinced that the speakers are exceptional and the questions are very high level as well. So this will turn this event into a great success. I'm very honored to open this event as the president of the International Organization of Employers, with more than 150 federations of employees and companies in more than 140 countries. And in France, we work with the MEDEF. So this organization has a crucial role to play in debates on social policies and professional policies at international level. Within the UN and the G20 and G7 and the Forum, we're basically the voice for all employers in the world, but also at regional scale and national scale. And Mr. Vasseur and Mr. Loubry said as well, I'm the CEO of the Santa Pharma. With 100,000 employees in Turkey in social on CSR, and moreover, we're a member of the UN since 2010. And so when you have CSR, you also have to have ISO certification for the environment. So you can see it's related to responsibility as well. And going back to the objective of my participation in this forum, the companies in the whole world and the people have to face changes and major challenges. So some see it as a revolution in the world and the labor work with risks, whereas others see it as an evolution with opportunities and benefits. So we had industrial revolutions and technological revolutions before. Potentially, I mean, this one, I mean, historically speaking, I mean, we had growth for states and more productivity and the creation of employment as well. And despite the short-term challenges coming from manual work and the need for high-level skills, I mean, this rhythm of transformation left enough room for education and training to catch up and equip workers who were not skilled enough with new skills that are necessary to work in a productive way. However, this latest technological revolution has had a faster change, and according to McKinsey Global Institute, technological innovation brought by artificial intelligence is 10 times faster and 300 times greater than the industrial revolution, and its impact is therefore more than 3,000 times higher. The future of work, as we call this transformation in various forums such as OIT, OECD, FME, and G7 and G20, is now a trending topic. On this basis, the OIE launched a discussion of future of work by tackling some of the 5 challenges discussed in this forum. After gathering information and contribution from a task force, a working group dedicated at the OIE, made of organization of employers and companies, and following 2 workshops that the OIE dedicated to this issue, the document called Understanding the Future of Work was issued and insists on trends in this world, as well as issues related to politics and recommendations for action as well. When we talk about the future of work, we refer to a concept which covers dynamic processes such as automation, growth in digital economy, and technological process, associated with deep changes in the work organization, globalization, changes in demography as well, environmental challenges, as well as new ways of organizing production of goods and services. Indeed, technology and innovation have direct impact on the labor work and the labor dimension. The impact of the change should not be the same for a region, but automation has to be seen in the context of a global world. Demographic changes are also unbalanced and difficult. For example, we have an aging issue in Europe, whereas that in developing countries, there's too many young workers. So all this is combined with the need to protect the environment, which is a priority for us all. The future of work is not an abstract word. It's already here, with multiple opportunities for society, as well as huge challenges. But now, we are at a specific crossroads where we can embrace this change and be ambitious. History is developed with examples of tries to resist innovation, which were just impossible. Progress cannot be stopped, but it has to be well managed. The 3 main challenges that we have to keep in mind are: how can we mix freedom and protection, individualism with working in communities, flexibility, and sustainability? One important item of the future of work lays in new opportunities and possibilities given by this evolution, with new capacities made possible by automation, an important number of new opportunities for employment, and new markets will be created again. Also, existing works or tasks could disappear or be adapted. In that respect, the revolution could be beneficial for individuals because it would make them enable them to be part of the global cloud and find new opportunities which do not exist at local level. Moreover, digital technology will provide on the short term many more leads for online training, which are affordable and efficient, therefore increasing opportunities for people and remaining employees. For example, a lot of universities now have massive open online courses, such as the Harvard University and the MIT, which are only 2 examples amongst those which exist. There's many more. Another item related to the regulation of the labor market. Regulations are essential to make sure that markets work well. It was shown that the regulation of the labor work can have an impact on a certain number of economic results, including creating employment, workflows, trends in productivity, and the ability to adjust to shocks. Negative effects of the under-regulation have already been proven. So the challenge is to find policies which avoid extreme situations and bring a balance between flexibility and protecting employees. As such, a dynamic commercial climate with a sustainable approach which enable companies to use digital technologies to innovate should be guaranteed by creating new companies and employment. In a global prospect, the work environment, the business environment has not been improved in many countries. Compliance with property rights, access to credit, and the problem with the legal system as well, and the lack of infrastructure and corruption are amongst the main issues. We need more efficient and better quality regulations. One aspect of this necessity for flexibility in the new labor work is related to flexible work commitments. Independent workers are more and more numerous, and we see new types of work appearing, such as crowd working, surveys with workers, portfolio work, and so on and so forth. So in the OIT publication on employment and social in the world in 2015, we considered that less than 20% of the active population has a full-time contract and on the long term. So seeing these new types of work as a bad thing is ignoring the benefits they can bring to workers and employers. These new ways of working, if they're well designed and regulated, can both protect workers and help companies by increasing their ability to answer and adapting to market requirements, as well as being flexible and resilient. They can also be a tool to keep and hire workers in order to use their skills more quickly and their expertise as well, in order to fight informal approaches. Moreover, employment chosen in flexible agreement means you can mix professional, personal, and family responsibilities. Other aspects in the regulation will have to be adapted, such as health and safety, data protection, and working hours. Regarding working hours in particular, there's no more working place and strict deadlines. The definition of the working place is developed beyond physical working places, and now it covers an individual working in their job. Work is not limited to the office, but also is part of the private field. It's not a place anymore, but rather a task. The split between private time and working time will become more and more difficult. Regulation on working hours have to take all this into account, as working hours is less relevant as a monitoring tool from a legal point of view and human resources. A lot of new sophisticated tools to monitor performance and workers' productivity are needed, even though the issue regards workers' private life and the potential to disconnect, especially in France. But as we all know, The future of work does not only show great varieties in ways of working, but also new types of working and new modes, innovative modes for companies. So we should believe that the participation working mode, as we call it, crowd work, which represents currently a small part of the global economy, will extend more and more to other sectors in the economy. New companies can afford to work at global scale without being big because their operations do not have to face obstacles such as capital or assets. It costs less and less to start a new company, which increases the potential to develop an individual company spirit. This transformation will have an impact on a series of institutional and legal frames, including social security, managing data, taxation systems, trade, and investment. The social security system, for example, have to be viable economically speaking, but also adaptable and accessible to as many people as possible in order to guarantee healthcare and pensions. For example, social security could be linked to the people and not to the employment status. Policies in terms of education, skills, and training are essential in that respect. It is clear for us that routine employment will be easily automated and that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as employment in the fields of health and social, will appear. In any case, workers have and will have to update their skills much faster than in the past. Policies optimizing the use of digitalization have to make sure that skills and technology are accessible to all, individuals and companies, and that the education system be modified in the right way. There should be a closer cooperation between companies and the education field to solve the issue of skills not being adapted. Skills mismatch, as we call it. Last but not least, the traditional model for industrial relationship will have to follow the changes in the labor work. The collective approach changes and the representation of trade unions is at stake. Social dialogue has to be more efficient, more proactive, and more inclusive, with different types of companies, for example. As a summary, there are 5 political key fields which will need to be rethought and modified, but I could name many more, in fact. But I'll stop at 5, the 5 main ones. Regulation for the labor market, environment for companies and business, needs for skills, social protection and social security, professional relationship, and social dialogue. One very relevant question that was asked and related to the leaders of this change, either institutions and more specifically trade unions, who live and represent the labor field. Companies and employees' organizations want to anticipate the reality and give their contribution to decision makers at national, regional, and international level. However, they also have to improve the dialogue with trade unions and build constructive discussions. The OIE launched a discussion amongst its members, but also contributed to the international debate. As I told you before, we represent the business world at the OIT and the G20 and G7, for example. This contribution went to speeches during the symposium on the future of work at the OIT, organized in April this year, and the creation of the World Commission at high level for the future of work at the OIT, with issuing documents for lobbying at the G20 forum and so on. So this Commission for Work will be chaired by the Swedish Prime Minister, Mr. Löfven, and the President of Mauritius. The institutions have to be much more ambitious to give answers and rebuild the build in politicians and governance, which was lost or is being challenged. We all need to think of the situation to have a real change in the design of models and political regulations. As such, the status quo in terms of regulation and policy design is not possible anymore. We also have to be ambitious and positive. We have to look at the whole series of options which we have. Thank you very much for listening.
Merci, Monsieur
Thank you, Mr. Kiesepi.
Merci bien.
Thank you very much indeed. So I'll ask you to come and join me here on a true change of model in their design, in their regulations. Where is your bag? Yeah, no, it's here. Hasn't gone. It's just here. He needs it. Just a second. I'll go and get your sort of satchel bag. I'm just going in front of that hashtag World Forum RE 2017. Do not hesitate to use it. React, just, interact. We have to be multitasking today with our Twitter network and all the other networks. So we want really to get the message through. So that's it. All your data are here. Right. It was for security reasons, of course. Well, thank you indeed for your speech, for your contribution. So we're going to debrief it with a simple question, which I'm going to ask you quickly, since you're here in this room, or on our in the 5 other cities that are connected to us. We'll see now the question on the screen, and then you'll be able to comment what comes out of it, what sort of answers we get. So, Errol Kiesepi's plea is to ensure that there are strong breaks in the regulation around work, with your 5 sort of points that you mentioned. And it's up to you to react now on those main sort of challenges that we have to be confronted with. So these are some of the examples that you mentioned: skills, competencies, globalization, digitalization, artificial intelligence, demography, robots. But of course, it doesn't stop at that. So we're waiting for your reactions. Just to make it clear what the purpose of all this is. Serge and Noémie are still working hard and are just sort of classing everything they've got, all the reactions, and will draw inspiration from these comments that comes from you for the final declaration. So there are really so many pertinent or impertinent topics. So thank you again, and let's carry on. So we'll take 6 or 7 minutes, and then we'll see what our guests have come up with, and then we'll comment that with Mr. Kiesepi. And then we'll have 3 revolutionaries who will challenge what you said. Right. Okay. Major challenges that we'll have to confront.
Vous avez le droit de parler tout haut, là.
You can think aloud if you want to.
Ah, Monsieur Langlais, vous concertez avec votre voisin, Monsieur Vasseur?
Monsieur Langlais is now consulting Monsieur Vasseur. I can see that.
Ce serait bien, Serge, que tu...
Serge, maybe it would be a good idea for you to prioritize what's coming up, to have the top one proposals, etc. If you classify, if you rank everything, then that'll help.
Ouais. Le sujet éducation a fait tilt, a priori, dans ce qu'on voit là.
So I can see that education is top of the list.
La régie, est-ce que vous pouvez mettre à l'écran
So can we now have the Noémie and Serge laptop display there to see all the major keywords that have come up?
Encore 3 minutes.
Another 3 minutes.
C'est de la réflexion express, mais c'est là où vous êtes les meilleurs.
So it's thinking on your feet. That's where people are at their best.
Ça, c'est les mots-clés qui reviennent le plus souvent. Et...
These are the most recurrent keywords, and then we'll see what hides behind them.
Très bien. Ouais, bien sûr. Allez, encore quelques secondes.
Few more seconds.
Ah, ça nous manquait, hein.
Ah. That we were getting, we needed that drill in the background that cheers us up, doesn't it?
Pendant la vente, les travaux continuent.
During the sales, basically, work goes on, as people say.
En fait, c'est un dentiste qui est juste à côté.
In fact, it's just a dentist just next door.
Bon, c'est bon, les amis.
Right, are we there? Can we just...
Noémie, Serge.
Noémie, Serge, is that okay with you?
On peut commencer à voir des choses.
Can we start sort of seeing that cloud develop?
On va
taking shape. So, Mr. Kirizepi, I just wanted to focus on a few items, a few of them, and then we'll give the floor to some of the revolutionaries who are there in this room. We're all revolutionary, sustainable ones, of course. So what do you suggest, Serge?
Donc là, on a
So we have this cloud of keywords. There's education. Should we go on education? Maybe you told us what the 5 priorities were, which we'll have to explore further to change regulations, organizations, but I have a feeling that it's sort of horizontal, it's linear when you're talking about digital, artificial intelligence. What will matter, once again, is the systemic approach. Do you confirm this? We've spoken of so many challenges, really, but these challenges are not new. They're already here and now. So what we're saying is that we have to act, because the DG of ILO said we can create the future we want, but I'd like to say we have to act and be decisive, because it's just with words you can't do anything. It's not enough. I'll give you, in 1844, the weavers rebelled and they burnt all the looms. And then we waited for 40 years to have a social security system. Now we don't want to wait for 40 years, so we have to be proactive to have the future that we want. As I said, we have this Commission for the Future of Work. It will tackle the key factors of change and what we have to do to ensure that this process of change should be heading towards social justice. Do you actually you trust the pace of things, the pace of basically businesses that want quick changes, and the pace of public authorities, of governments, that will have to sort of somehow take hold of the situation and manage the situation? That's why the basically ILO founded this Commission of Work. There are 28 members on it, and one of them is the president of ADECO, Alain Deas. You know him, I'm sure. There's the IOE has one from Norway, one from India, and there are other members from NGOs, and other members are from government. So this commission will come up with a report, and this report will be debated, discussed during the International Labour Conference in 2019. It will be the centenary of the ILO, and the topic will be the future of work. Are you interested in what this World Forum will produce? We can give you the book. Yes, maybe, but this forum, the future of work, the ILO Commission has already had fora in various parts of the world. It's had dealt with 5 different topics, and we've had 100 different conferences throughout the world. But the book that will give us about your own reaction will give us some inkling as to which direction the Commission should go. I took pictures of the questions and answers that that came up on the screen. So to give us sort of basically input to be able to present this to the Commission. So we've made a note of this. We're always interested in the documents. We'll give you the full book on this. There are 34 different proposals on education. Can we go on another item now, another word? Choose a keyword, Mr. Keresepi. Is quality of life at work, demography. There's that word at the bottom, yes, demography. So it's changing, really. What are the issues? We have globalization, artificial intelligence, automation. The world of work is changing. There's an element that triggers all this is the demographic element. There's also a change in values and the preferences that people have. So all this is a combination that it will change, of course, from one country to country. So we can't have a one-fit-all solution. In Europe, there's general aging of the population. We say that in 1950, in Europe, we had 12%. The population was 12% higher. Those who were over 65 accounted for 12% of the population. And in 2050, it will increase tremendously. In Japan, when you take Japan, we have 127 billion population, and those who are over 65 account for 28% of the population. In 40 years, the population will drop to 92 million, and elderly people of over 65 will go up to 40% of the population. So the supply, the demand on the market will change. There'll be more need for care for the elderly. The jobs will be different. If we go if we're talking about emerging countries, the population is young, by and large. So the demand will be focused on sustainable products. The demand on the market will be different. It will vary from one country to the country, so competencies will be different. You've made the demonstration that all your items are linked. Demography equals competence, equals training, etc. So, Serge, go ahead, just show us more data. Then we'll go to Strasbourg and Rouen. Technology, artificial intelligence, governance by algorithms, control of artificial intelligence, demography as opposed to intelligent or smart cities. Smart cities, so global warming, put the technological advances at the service of global well-being. You're talking about the contributive businesses as being part of a plus for humanity. We've been working on skills, really, competences. It's true that technology, automation will destroy some jobs, some sort of workers somehow, indirectly. So the OECD said 9% of the jobs won't be there anymore. But there's other data that says that 25% of the jobs will change in 40 or 70% of the tasks of certain positions, which account for 25, will change. So the work is split in tasks, and some tasks are going to become automatic. And 25% of this work will have 50% of their tasks that will change. It means that we have to retrain people, give new skills, reskill people who are now have this job to make sure that they have a job in the future. So I suggest we go to Strasbourg. Can we connect to the team that's there in Strasbourg? Can you tell us about what minute what your input is?
Voilà.
Can you hear us?
C'est à vous. Je vous en prie, on vous écoute.
That's it. Go ahead. We're all ears. We've worked on what we just heard, and what comes out is the challenge for us is to provide specific answers in terms of training or information as well, with quoting the idea, the concept of the factory of the future, to ensure that businesses can work in this field. So that was the first idea. The second one is not to just be consumers. Your speaker mentioned the fact that you have to be an actor of your protagonist of your own life. So you have to make people responsible. The idea is important of freedom. The working space will change, so people have to be made more responsible. People have to understand the meaning of what they do. And third element that's linked to the digitization, the idea of digital exclusion. We know that there's a fringe, a part of the population that doesn't have access to the digitalization. It means that these people, if we don't really take them on board, they won't be able to have skills, have a job anymore. So the idea is to integrate digitally the whole population. Thank you very much, Strasbourg. Thank you, Alexandre. I know that quite apart from those 5 cities we're connected with, but there are people who see us in streaming, through the streaming service. So do not hesitate to make your own contribution. I have a comment. Employability is a very important factor. Employability is not just a question of individual responsibility. It means it's a responsibility of the individual, of the business, and of society at large. So it's co-responsibility in order to ensure that there is employability. For this, so that the businesses can be competitive. So you do skilling with your workers, and as a result, you're more competitive on the market. Society must also play its role, and the individuals must know, citizens know that they must have to increase their skills and have upskilling to be employable, because now what matters is skill and not so much qualification. So when you go in the human resources department in various companies, they look at your qualifications, but what matters now is the future. Does this person have the potential to do what you're suggesting? So this employability, the human resources department must work on that. Juan now? Juan? Yes? We asked to do some prospective sort of exercise. Normally we do it in a stable work, which is in a stable world. That's not the case at all, that there are elements that will destabilize the world, particularly climate, really, the climate. So we think that there are prerequisites to be able to reply to this question, maybe to think out of the box, rethink our mental framework, our mindset. We had the point of view of the employers so far, so maybe we need the other points of view to complete that picture. So it's not a question of predicting the future, but of building the future. In order to do that, you have to get organized, get together to ensure that the skills are there to build this future. And we also wonder what the roles the role of the citizens will be. So we do not have any answers, but we have more sort of questions that complete the thinking exercise. Thank you very much. This is a social issue. When there are problems, you tend to dialogue with people. That is a social problem. So social dialogue between all parties is important to think the future out. And what we do at the ILO, everything is done on the basis of a consensus. Social dialogue is essential between both sides of industry, workers and government. It's not just the employers who decide. So we have to reinvent the social dialogue, i.e. it won't be both sides of industry. There'll be a third side. So the revolutionary bunch that you have here, are you happy there, you? The revolutionaries? So I'm going to take 3 out of them. I'll give them 1 minute to tell us. You made us a proposal. How it how you think about it, and the questions that this might raise in the audience. Can we turn the light on in the audience here? Now, a major revolutionary, Didier Leroy. VCO of Toyota. About Japan, he was in your in your place during another World Forum, and he gave us his roadmap up to 2050, and he explained all the various points that you've mentioned. You actually find them in the transformation that you actually done. You're coming back this year because you'll be able to exchange with young people on these future, desirable futures. Didier Leroy, what's your reaction? You have an observation to make. Can we turn his mic on, please? I'll give you my microphone. I highlighted 5 points in your presentation, and let me just mention them very quickly. If I look at you, I won't look at the camera anymore, so I don't know. I'll go on the stage. That's probably the easiest. Right. I noted 5 points. First of all, I fully agree when you say that it's totally a figure. You can't just not think about artificial intelligence. It can't be something that you can't play the ostrich with that. Put your hand in the sand. This is not a question of whether it will happen, whether you can slow it down or anything. The problem is how will you be able to tackle it, and can we do it in order to be at the service of mankind as such? So you mentioned another element. Lots of people are very worried about that. Yeah, of course, there's ground for concern, but nobody has an answer. So we're very worried about this topic, but the fact of being concerned is not a question of us, putting our hands on the sand. It's not a question that it won't happen, it will happen, it is happening. So what can we build together? I stress the word together. We spoke about businesses and the various sides of industries. The real revolution is to stop that fight that says you've got employers on one side, workers on the other. Can we build something together with both sides of industry? That will make the difference. Second element, we saw a robot earlier on. Didn't have any Wi-Fi after that. It couldn't react. But artificial intelligence, it's the same. It's not a question of whether you can control it, contain it. It's there tomorrow morning. It's already here. There are 100,000 people who are killed in their cars. The point of artificial intelligence is not to suppress taxi drivers to make sure that Uber gets the upper hand because there'll be no taxi drivers. It's to ensure that there are no accidents on the roads. That's what we're working on that. That's what we're talking about, this driverless car. The idea, stressing the security aspect. Yesterday, I was in Athens, and we made an important launch on Operton assistance. Artificial intelligence will mean that people will actually stay at home. Old people, elderly people won't be in a condition where they can't come out of their house or end up in a home. It's clear that if you have a mobility system that enables you to have mobility freedom. It's not a question of cars. This freedom of movement, that's the third point I wanted to highlight. Training, I agree 200% about what we said about training. With one proviso, we shouldn't just talk about the training of the elite. Those are going to get yet another diploma because they have the possibility through an internet site to learn a new skill, a new job, to program, or do something in research laboratories. Not everybody will work in research laboratories. For many years, France thought there was no future in industry, but only in the third sector. Those who will suffer from artificial intelligence is precisely the service industry. We have to agree that we can create new jobs, but for everyone. Training for everyone, not just for the elite, or as some said during the electoral campaign, is not for a certain number of people. There'll be work as long as we're capable, and it's my fifth point, and I'll sit down, to reassure people. I think one of the major roles of businesses will be able to reassure, but means to talk honestly by telling the truth, not by telling lies, and ensuring, reassuring, and helping people out. You also have a business, Monsieur Erol. How do you reassure and ensure that people are helped alongside that change? Thank you very much. Thank you, Didier. The role of managers is not to leave anybody on the side of the road. Didier, alors, can you reply to Didier Leroy? That training has to be done in businesses. When you take the various talents, you have to educate them. And with new technologies, you have to give people every time new skills. You have to keep have like lifelong learning. So it's these companies, these businesses that will retain the best, those who do that. If you want to be competitive, you have to be the best skills. And in order to keep them, retain them, there are other factors, because you'll have to change the hierarchy in the companies. There's no pyramid. Young people don't want to work in a system like that. They want the hierarchy to be horizontal. They want to be flexible, number two. And in order to retain talent and educate them and re-educate, but also create the conditions in which young people want to work, because what is important is flexible work, working from home. People don't work from 9 to 5 anymore. Now it's flexible work. The idea is to get it over with, is not to be within 4 walls and do nothing. Those 4 walls don't exist anymore. You'll have the social problem, because when you used to come to work, it was a place where you would socialize with your partners, your friends. But if you work remotely, if you're mobile, you will be losing that. But that is the new way of working. So in order to retain the best who work in the company, in order to be competitive in your company, you have to change the way the work process sort of develops in your company and help them with the new technology.
Right, so briefly, 2 new testimonies, Nisimbule and Mazongo, another revolutionary from South Africa. Is this mic working? Welcome. Please hold the mic. Join us on stage. You okay? So welcome to you. You come from South Africa. You're the founder and the director of Euro Investment, Biren Investment, and also FIFINE, which works on financial independence for women of all ages. And your organization globally aims at improving financial independence for people so that they are real players in their own lives and their own territories. So just in a couple of minutes, could you react to what we've been saying this morning? Good morning.
Thank you so much.
On l'entend pas,
It's not working. Okay.
S'il vous plaît.
Okay, let me grab yours. Sorry.
Voilà.
All right. So I'll just leave that there.
Okay.
With regards to that, so Biren Investments, we specialize in financial literacy training. It's very important when you're looking at building a responsible economy. Money makes the world go round. But the biggest part is that people don't understand how to manage money. We look at how governments are mismanaging money, large corporations, and over 75% of employees are financially stressed. So when it comes to building a responsible economy, we as Biren Investments, we see it as people need to have a fair understanding of handling personal finances as well as money management in corporations. So when we look at Females with Finance, which is a derivative of Biren Investments, we aim to educate women and we aim to uplift them. And we want them to become financially independent because women play a very big role in society. And as a millennium, back in the days, you just have a husband and you sit at home and you have kids and that's it. But with the way that the economy is moving, having one source of income as a couple is not enough. So this is why we need to encourage our young girls, we need to encourage women in all parts of the world, irrespective of religion, irrespective of regulations, we need to encourage women to become financially literate. And that's the best way for us to also build a responsible economy, financial literacy, education.
Okay. Thank you. Errol, commentaire?
I totally agree on that. And today is not... Oh, excusez. En anglais ou en français? I totally agree on what you are saying. Because financial literacy is not only for women, it's also for men needed. Because this is how the economy will go one step further. But I have to add one more thing, that women today, in emerging countries, women entering in the world of work are changing also the style of the work. Because as I said before, we have demographic changes, and values and preferences are changing in people. And when you are coming to an emerging country, women are entering into the labor market. Entering into the labor market, then they want more flexible working times because they have to have their family and work balance. Therefore, in emerging countries where the women were not so much in the workforce, and entering the workforce and increasing their percentage in the workforce, it increases the GDP of the countries, yes, but it changes also the mode of work and the type of work they are doing. Yes. It's more flexibility, and it's not only the flexibility we are talking today, we will have even different type of flexibilities coming in the future.
Merci beaucoup. Allez,
thank you very much. Stay with us. One more revolutionary player, Carmen Roman. Where are you? Welcome to you. So Carmen Roman comes from Chile. She joined the executive committee of a company called Sofofa, and she's the head of the Council for Diversity and Inclusion at Walmart in Chile. And you received this year the Chile Prize for Executive Women of the Year. One comment, one question. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I think this is an important matter of leadership. And the leadership starts by me or by my company. If nothing changed, if I change, everything changed. I think that is the important thing, because the companies need to be aware of the responsibility that they have in terms of the impact that they produce in the community. So if the companies understand that they need to be conscious, and the leadership of that company, I'm talking about the board members, I'm talking about the shareholders, I'm talking about the main administration or the important administration. I think this is not a matter of an important area of the company, because sometimes you know that you have a very good programs regarding, for example, ethics, compliance, and everything, but the leadership of that company is not involved in that kind of program. So I think that this is an important matter of leadership. And another important thing for me is the alliance between the private sector with the governments, because sometimes the governments can't go so fast as the important companies. The companies more times have can produce the impact more easy than the government.
Bien sûr. C'est l'histoire du tempo dont on parlait tout à l'heure.
Yes, that's the issue mentioned before, and you have to make sure that the planners are in line in a way.
What I will say is leadership is important, okay, but leadership has to understand that if they don't do this change, they will disappear. Mm-hmm. And not only governments, what I will say, you're saying about the partnership between enterprises, leadership, and government, I will say no, also with the trade unions and the workers. You need the social dialogue. Right. If you don't have social dialogue, you cannot solve. This is my personal belief. Social dialogue is the basis for everything, is the clé de voûte for the solution to this problem.
Yes.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Errol Kerzepi, for opening this 2016 World Forum. Thank you very much for your contribution. I suggest...
Je vous en prie. Merci, madame.
Go ahead.
Je vous propose d'entendre une autre
we listen to another revolutionary player. We spotted her last year in Paris for the World Forum.
Merci encore. C'est
Marie-Claire Capobianco at BNP Paribas. She tells us how, in her bank, global bank, they prepare this revolution. Let's listen to her. Good morning to all of you. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you today because obviously I'm deprived of sharing discussions with you on this main issue, which is the responsible revolution, this technological, social, societal revolution. I wanted to give you my vision, my testimony, under 3 titles: as a member of an EXCO, as a banker in the field, and also as a leader with 28,000 people. As a member of the EXCO at BNP Paribas, World Bank, a European leader, so I'm convinced of the responsibility of and all the steps that built our vision of responsibility. And the last step, in fact, was in 2016, based on a consultation with the 500 senior executives in the group, and we said that the idea was to fund the economy and support our clients in an ethical way and redefine and modernize our values and our mission. In order to do so, we also described major principles, which was to say that we wanted a positive impact on our stakeholders and society in general. So we felt the need very recently to go beyond this, and we created the company commitment company at the beginning of September, and the director, in fact, who joined the group is also part of the EXCO, which will show you the importance we give to this aspect. And this notion of commitment has got this mission, which is to gather. On the one hand, you used to have diversity and on the CSR, and in this field, our general director said the decision we took in the policy for hydrocarbons from oil and shale gas and oil sands, we would stop some activities or support other activities for all energy players who are themselves committed in energy transition. Second testimony, as a baker in the field, well, I could notice when I met customers and entrepreneurs on a daily basis, and the action that we lead, want to lead, well, entrepreneurs, I'm struck by the fact that they are really aware of the searching for social impact with young companies, startups, and so on, but also other companies or other players and associations that want to reach this as well. We have a crucial role to play, an increasing role to obviously support this ability to have a social impact and this inclusion. For example, we could structure the first contract with social impact subscribed by the ADI, and when I say social impact, I mean it's enabling funders and private funders to finance a project with a social impact, and obviously they're reimbursed, but basically we are convinced and we have the will to try and favor inclusion and to support new entrepreneurship at times, and the fact that you support entrepreneurs from popular areas, for example, is very important to us, and we contribute to it. We had the first startup in a suburb, and we were there, and I believe that we can really spot new talents and create a lot of values. And apart from this aspects of inclusion and this notion of meaning and impact, there's also another aspect related to raising awareness for the need in evolution related to technological revolution. And in this field, I think that this awareness is not enough yet, and I believe there's still work to do together so that entrepreneurs who do not realize yet that they are impacted and they have to go through this transformation, they will have a shock. So we have this role to support, once again, to make sure they understand the technological stakes and the risks associated with it as well, and the way we can access it. And the strongest challenge in this whole revolution is the management challenge, because how can you, on the one hand, deliver this transformation, which is compulsory digital revolution, changes in expectations from our customers, with new users, and we want to have a very flexible access with digital and human as much as possible. But how can you deliver the goods, basically, but also keeping in mind and reinforcing the commitment from all the teams, because they have strong expectations as well in terms of meaning and vision and trust in the future. So this is the number one aspect on which we have to invest a lot, because this means you have to change the way we explain or we show the transformation. I mean, I've just been through France. I met more than 2,000 workers to explain the transformation that we want to do as part of our 2020 plan. I didn't meet managers. I met representatives from each type of position to have a message which is really for the whole, for all the teams, no matter what their position. And something else has to change, which is the notion of boss, basically, because the relationship of hierarchy should be different. First of all, you reduce the layers. In today's world, I mean, you want to be much more horizontal as before. This means you have to change as well the relationship. I mean, a boss before used to be someone who had great knowledge and could therefore give clear instructions, but now we need to have bosses who can mobilize energy to have teams which are multidisciplinary, obviously, and with several skills for projects to move forward. So it's not the same thing at all. It's different types of skill. You have to question yourself as opposed to what we had in the past. So we'll succeed in this transformation only if all the teams have trust in the future and have a positive vision of it. So we believe that the future could and has to be better, and this can only be done if we have this idea that economic growth and CSR, and therefore innovation as well, have to go together. Thank you very much for listening. Wow, right. You noticed, I mean, how similar this was to what we've just said. And I mean, what you said and the three players we had before. So we're on the right track. So, our next guest, Philippe Vasseur, you really wanted him to be with you as well for this introductory plenary. In the United States, he's the specialist in local economy and the commitment of the company and SMEs and so on in the economy, local economy. And obviously, we've been showing the implication at local level of companies with the development of the territories, and he will explain the relationship between economic prosperity and anchoring the activity on the territory. So he developed loads of local communities in the United States, because small is beautiful, and comes here to show an operational approach to rebuild economies which are challenged and which can be reborn. And he also created a network of 35,000 entrepreneurs in the United States, which represent 450,000 employment. We'll give him 10 minutes, and then we'll debrief with you. Welcome to Michael Schumann, coming from the United States. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Merci.
Great pleasure to be with you. Thank you for inviting me. I am sorry I do not speak your beautiful language, but I do want to share with you some ideas about how to build a prosperous economy. Last night, I had dinner with a bunch of entrepreneurs in this region. Some of them were doing wind power, some of them biofuels, some of them small-scale energy systems. All of them were reinventing work. All of them were reinventing their economies. All of them need more money to succeed. And that is my essential point here. A third industrial revolution requires a financial revolution. We will only be able to support the expansion of local energy, local buildings, local storage, and local circular economies through local finance and the rebuilding of local economies. The good news is that we know that locally owned businesses are the key to prosperity. This is a study that was done in British Columbia in 2013, comparing the impact of $1 spent at locally owned restaurants or retailers versus chain restaurants and retailers. And what it shows is that about 50 cents of every dollar spent in a local restaurant and retailer recycles in the economy, whereas at a chain, it's about 17 cents. What this means is that every time you spend $1 mindfully at a locally owned restaurant or retailer, your region gets 2.5 times the jobs, 2.5 times the taxes, 2.5 times the income and the wealth effects. But don't take my word for it. This is from the Harvard Business Review in the summer of 2010. It's an analysis of regions across the United States, and surprise, those regions with the highest density of locally owned businesses have the highest per capita job growth rate. But not just that, but this study from our Federal Reserve in 2013 shows that in counties with the highest density of locally owned business, we have the highest per capita income growth rate. So if you care about work, if you care about welfare, the key is to nurture local small businesses. And I think there are many ways that we can support small businesses. And I have a sort of 6P approach that I don't have time to go through, but there's one P that I think we need to focus on because it's critical, and that is purse. How we move local savings, whether in banks or in pension funds, into all of these important local businesses. Now, if I had more time, I would show you evidence that most of the French economy is locally owned business, that these businesses are at least as profitable as big companies. These businesses are highly competitive and becoming more competitive. So surely all of you are investing in them. Let me ask you a question. By show of hands here, those of you with pension funds, how many put at least 1% into locally owned business, the majority of your economy? Okay, let the record show that almost no hands went up. This is outrageous. You folks are putting your lives into transforming the economy, and you're systematically investing in the wrong things. Unless we change this behavior, you will never have a third industrial revolution. What we have discovered in the United States is that if we can fix our capital markets, there would be a transfer of $25 trillion from Wall Street to Main Street. That works out to $75,000 per person. And I suspect that a local investment revolution here could mean as much in every town in France. We recognize that this capital market failure grows out of law. Laws that made sense in the 1930s, but make no sense now. We had laws that made it too expensive for small businesses to get money as investment from small investors. We changed that in 2012. This is a picture that I took from the Rose Garden when we changed national law around crowdfunding. What then happened was extraordinary because our securities regulators at the national level said, we don't like this law so much. So 37 states in the last 4 years have changed their securities laws. And so now we have made it fundamentally easier and cheaper for grassroots investors to put money into local business. We formed an organization called the National Coalition for Community Capital, now in our second year, that brings together all of our organizers across the country to continue to think of new ways we can change investment law. And we're inspired by our neighbors to the north in Canada. For example, in the province of Nova Scotia, they have made it cheap and easy for communities to create their own pension funds. There are more than 70 of these so-called community economic development investment funds. In the province of Alberta, they have made it cheap and easy for people to create cooperatives with the mission of investing in low-income communities. In the province of New Brunswick, they have created last year a 50% tax credit. That is, every dollar you spend on a local investment in New Brunswick takes 50 cents off of your provincial taxes. These are all very important proposals. Where I want to leave you is with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And you may remember that after Indiana had suffered through snakes and spiders, he got to a crypt, and there was a 500-year-old guardian who said, Indiana, your last task will be to choose from among these 50 goblets and choose the goblet from which Christ drank. Choose wisely. Well, at that point, this guy, the German spy, jumps to the front and said, I know which tablet would be the best one that Christ would have drunk from. It would have been the most ornate. He drinks from it, and he combusts. At that point, the Guardian says he chose poorly. My argument is that all of us are choosing poorly right now. As you can see by your show of hands, you are choosing poorly on where you are putting your money. Put your money where your ideals are. Thank you.
Merci, Michael.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Come on. Je vous en prie.
Please go ahead.
Alors,
debrief with you, short debrief with you. Just before we do, before I ask you a question on what you've just said, I mean, we had a lot of reaction on the previous issue as well. Could you display the summary? I believe we had more than 500 contributions to the previous question that we asked you regarding the new tools that can be implemented. How many exactly, Serge? You have it on your screen. Wow, 572. So we've been recording them, and we really have the whole list of suggestions that you sent. And as you can see, what's obvious, I mean, training, employment, social cohesion, life quality at work, education, and so on and so forth. So it's exactly what we discussed before. But behind that, there's also a great contribution, which you will bring back with you for your work next year. So let's go back to the speech of Michael Suman. So at the end of the day, the question, I mean, behind what you presented is rather simple, which is, I mean, this approach with these methods, which you have proven, this is your experience, what conclusion can you draw as a territory? What is this, I mean, at our scale? I mean, can we have the question again? What does that mean for us as territories? What are the ideas you suggest to move forward on these clusters, on the territorial commitment of the companies and companies as lever for development? So all this is kind of related and very clear. And what you presented was very high performance. So what are the ideas to move forward? I'll give you 5 minutes to answer these questions, and then we'll comment with Michael, and we'll go round all the sides who are connected as well, because they are territories as well, and they must have things to say. So a couple of minutes. Go ahead.
Les territoires à la manœuvre.
So the territories now are there, sort of refurbishing their weapons. How can they move forward? So what you will suggest will be part of the final declaration for the World Forum 2017. You can always exchange ideas with your neighbors. Do not hesitate to talk about that.
Et juste après cet exercice,
then after this exercise, we'll have a wrap-up with our last speaker, and then we'll conclude with the president of the World Forum.
Encore 2 minutes 30.
Another 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Errol, le compositeur de la musique, vous entendez?
Errol, the composer of the music we're actually listening to is Turk. He's a Turkish composer. We did this especially for our Turkish guests.
La dernière minute.
Last minute. I'm going to see what Noémie and Serge have come up with on their screens.
D'accord. Ah, pardon. Ah, très bien. Tu as eu combien de... On en est déjà à 220 contributions.
We've already got 220 reactions.
Et on termine.
A few more seconds and that's it.
Merci. Hein. Merci de bosser.
Thank you very much for working so hard for us, for us all, for our businesses, for their territories. Right. So now we can have a first summary of the work and the proposals that have been made. We'll quickly look at the input, and then I'll ask Michael what his reaction is, and then we'll go through the various the 5 cities which are connected to us, and then we'll get to the summary for the whole morning. So you can see economy, investment, development, business, money, currency, in that sense, 220 contributions. So that local currency, they're talking about this, create local currency. We're going to have to really give the capacity to decide on the territory. Can you come back to the currency, local currency, develop local currency, ch'ti, because ch'ti is the local way of speaking here in Lille, in order to have local links, complementary currency. People spoke about the territory, and the territory needs its own tools, economic, financial tools, to actually be in control of its development. Development now, or economy rather, circular economy, that's something that we've been cherishing for many years. In Europe now it is, and in France as well, it is part of the local legislation, social and economy, to put the emphasis on local economy, VAT and taxes paid in the country where the goods are delivered, redirect the savings and individual savings towards the local economy on a large scale, meshing businesses and citizens in order to foster local investment. What do you suggest, Serge? Another word, maybe? Go to development or business, company, territorial. That's what Monsieur Vasseur says. President has decided. but your suggestions are, you know, highly thought out of. So, territorial marketing, have territorial marketing, poles of basically territorial dialogue, development, speeding up circular economy. It's on the territories, really, that all this is happening. We've shown that in last year's World Forum. It's not the legislation, it's the territories. There are various sort of territorial clusters. Your comment, Michael. Well, Michael is talking, you can go on other items.
So there are 3 items that I thought I would comment on. The first is on local money. And what I have seen in experiments around the world, and there's probably several thousand local money experiments, is that they get real and serious when the local government participates. That is, if you look at Bristol, the Bristol pound in the United Kingdom, they have a very powerful local money system because they pay the mayor and the city council members in the local currency, and they allow people to partially pay their taxes through the local currency. That's how it gets to be from 1% to 75% of the economy. The second point, I absolutely agree that the challenge is to think about how to redirect savings into local business. In the United States, in addition to workplace pensions and Social Security, we have these special accounts called IRAs and 401ks, and I just finished a book to outline exactly how people can take those pieces of money and reorganize them to put them into local business. There is a need for a group of people in France to do something similar with your investment mechanisms, to give very exact instructions on how to move the money from global stocks and bonds to local opportunities. I want to say that those local opportunities are a lot of local businesses, but it's not just local business. It's also local real estate, and it may be a city-based project. So we have in the United States cities that issue debt notes, say around energy efficiency, and now we have crowdfunding sites that enable the cities to reorganize their bonds, their debt notes, so that grassroots people can purchase them.
Très bien. Oui, je relis ce que vous dites, parce que j'ai vu ça là sur il y a 2-3 écrans. La demande.
I'll come back to what you were saying. Can you go back to the word citizen? I'd seen the word citizen before. To listen to people on the ground, who live on their territory, and connected to the economic actors. So now players will go quickly now through the rest of France. We'll start with Levallois. Raphaël Leroy, are you here? Yes? Hello, everybody.
Bonjour, merci à vous tous d'avoir
Thank you all for taking part in our work. So on this issue of the local implication or commitment, engagement, in Levallois, here you have we have the social actors locally. We immediately thought about social businesses that are really involved in that territorial aspect. The idea is that there should be a dynamic, that you should keep these skills in the territory, that you should foster job creation, so that everybody is engaged about this social impact. And of course, that depends on the fundraisers, public players, but it's also the user-generated content. It's important for people to take hold of that. All these people are partners. When we're talking about management, we're not talking about top-down management. Citizens are fully fledged partners. So something that we have to foster at territorial level. We spoke about skills clusters, locally anchored. And I think that if you are on a territory, there are lots of people who live there, who work there. The idea is that there should be connection between the various parties and create your own ecosystem. So that's where we have a role to play in this context. Thank you. Connecting the citizens and making sure that people are engaged and have an impact on businesses and vice versa. So thank you very much. You're in charge of now Marseille. You're still there, Philippe? So you got 1 minute. We can't hear him. We'd like to listen to you, but we don't have the audio. The sound is... Maybe there's something that you have to do there locally, precisely. No? Okay, we'll come back to you. We'll try to get that fixed, and then... Philippe? Can you hear me now? Yes? Right. Can you see the people around the table? Fine. The debate was quite hot, and not to repeat what's already been said, there's a problem in terms of structuring the local fabric. Not everybody is pulling in the same direction. There has to be more political cohesion to have a territory, and very often the impulse is also given by the private sector from the point of view of the energy, but it also depends on the territory. The institutions actually kick off. In our country, we have what we call the sustainable sort of an ecosystem. We try to ensure that people have a proper CSR locally. We have self-diagnosis. There's also financial backing. And it's a way of actually moving forward territorially. Last year at Forum, we said local is beautiful. Let's change things from inside, from within, because within a territory, you have the responsibility of the territories, also that of businesses, i.e., what do business do to develop their territory they're anchored in? It's not just an entity with employees, but it's also got a local responsibility. Not everybody has the same responsibility, and politicians and businesses not always work together, which means that there is a shortage of a common vision of things. So we all have to pull the chart in the same direction. That's the experience you have in the States. There are territorial organizations that are there. We do have to pull the cart in the same direction for its development. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll be talking about the program which this region has, F3, which is the result of the Lille Forum. We'll assess it at 4 p.m. We'll go to Bordeaux now. Hello. Oh, gosh. Can you hear? Yes, we can hear that very well. Thanks, Florent. We really thought things out. You can see we were rather creative. We did lots of mind maps, and we have a B Corp uniform in order to serve local economies. That's also important. B Corp is later on at 5 p.m. here.
So
what we've done is that we try to describe the various Bordeaux initiatives at business level, the new ways of doing things, what we call labo mobile, mobile laboratory, startups. We're talking about ecosystem in a stimulating sort of atmosphere. There's also what we call the B Corp system, and this should trigger a local and sustainable movement in order to serve this purpose. So what sort of avenues could we follow? We thought about the need to understand the territory well, to stop economic leakage. We want to diversify the economic fabric, and also funding and innovation. This is something that we have to explore further here in Bordeaux. So it reminds me of a question that we'll have to deal with, the idea of territorial competition, because all territories have this approach. So, of course, you have to compete, but, you know, what is interesting, they're doing something very interesting in Bordeaux. They have mapping tools about the circular economy. You've done that in a few minutes, but also tools and methods. Thank you very much from the Bordeaux area. And there's also wine in Bordeaux, of course. What the English call claret, but... So now, Rouen.
Jean-Michel à Rouen.
Jean-Michel.
Il va apparaître dans quelques instants.
We're going to see you. That's it. 1 minute. What did you come up with? Lots of ideas sort of transpired. I'd just like to highlight a few. First of all, the idea to relocalize the creation of value on the territory. You're right, that's important. Organize globalization accordingly, maybe come back to a more regulated globalization so that the capital gain can be relocalized. The idea of common good, which is at the service of the economy and also of citizens, this has to be forefront. And this means that you have to break with the silo working patterns and to work more cooperatively. It's important where competition is the queen, so to speak, or king in this society. The idea is to foster cooperation, put living together at the core of our thinking, locally as well, and nationally. The elements that seem to disappear behind the backdrop of the traditional economy that only takes its root in the monetization of economic life. So we have to go back to immaterial, intangible values that is also bring salt and pepper to our life. An important element as well, which maybe is a hindrance, this idea of competition between the territories, which maybe can be justifiable, legitimate, of course, but at the same time, it's quite doesn't seem to be right to put territories in competition, in a competitive framework. The idea is to pull that cart in the same direction. That is better. Thank you very much for this approach of common good and territory, the general good. That's what you've said quite well. Now we end up with Strasbourg. We have sausages. In Jeanne d'Arc, we have, in Rouen, we have Jeanne d'Arc, Joan of Arc. Okay, that's a bit sort of simplistic, I agree. Never mind. The sound is not very good. No, the sound is not very good.
Là, c'est bon?
Top.
Is that better now?
Voilà.
Right.
Donc,
the first reaction we've had collectively is to say it was good to have a global approach, a global view of globalization, and then one on the local dimension. What is interesting is one and the other, and not one against the other or versus the other. The networks, Ball is one of it in the USA, is the capacity of local networks to integrate the players and make sure that they get to know each other through local initiatives. And when you anchor them locally, then you sort of root that value locally as well. The second element that seemed to be key to us is the funding model. We mentioned crowdfunding. These new funding models can be an answer to all the businessmen who want to go faster, want to speed things up. This is going to develop further. Some businessmen who are here, I said, well, it's good to hear about that, but it doesn't quite happen like that on the ground. So there's an urgency in actually fleshing out such ideas and giving them local routing. The idea is to develop the strong points. We mentioned the idea of competition. Each territory has its strong points, and it's more a case of strengthening that and basically to make the difference, really. Thank you very much for your contribution. Michael, your comment about this French sort of overview of things?
Well, there's absolutely nothing I disagree with. I think that the idea of pulling in the same direction is exceedingly important. In the United States, we often see a small part of local government working for localization and a big part of local government giving subsidies to attract global companies. And these parts are working in contradiction to one another. So if we are serious about local economy, all elements of local government need to work in that direction. Part of doing this is creating an entrepreneurial ecosystem. That ecosystem requires, as was said, analysis of leaks in the community where dollars are unnecessarily leaving the community and could be captured through local production, identifying great new entrepreneurs to lead leak-plugging businesses, collaborative networks of local business that are stronger together than they would be apart, great local purchasing opportunities pushed by consumers, businesses, and local agencies. I think that one of the elements of successful local economic development policy is corporate social responsibility, or B Corps. We often think of B Corps as a model, a test of doing good. But the truth is that B Corps are great for economic development. If you get a lot of businesses to pay the workers more, well, that means a stronger spending in the community. We just did a study in Baltimore looking at the impact of 1,000 companies becoming B Corps and found that just that transformation would create about 200 jobs. The last thing that I want to mention is that I think competition under the old paradigm is a dangerous thing. When my gain is your loss, that's a problem. But the great thing about building local economies is that my gain can be your gain. Everything that you do to achieve energy self-reliance in Marseille is a lesson that I can learn from in Strasbourg, or frankly, learn from in Detroit or San Francisco. We need to build an international collaborative network so we share best practices that move everyone in the direction of self-reliance. That's a global economy that's worth fighting for.
Merci beaucoup, Michael Schuman. Merci. Et il est avec nous pendant les 3 jours. Là, vous le retrouverez dans
He'll be here with us for the next 3 days. Thank you very much, Michael. So now we're coming to the wrapping up moment for a last-minute speaker, Raphaël Mavigné. Thank you, Michael.
Salut. Ah, on me dit qu'il n'y a plus d'image derrière. On va faire ça. C'est un peu con.
On parlait tout à l'heure, on a fait...
Bon, vous avez 30 secondes pour nous ramener l'image, les amis, la technique. Alors, vous avez quel âge?
Right, how old are you? 29.
Raphaël, on l'a invité.
Raphael, we invited him for the summary. First of all, well, it's been several months when he said, I wanted to come to the World Forum, so welcome. Thank you. Raphael, we invited him for this summary and to share just in a few minutes well, your vision on these revolution in plural that we mentioned this morning, because with his friend, Jules, well, you went around the world to go and spot 150, something like that, demonstrators of these new types of economies, circular economy in particular. So all the revolution seeds in the world. What did you do exactly? Good morning to all of you. So to go back to the theme of this World Forum, well, what solutions for today for tomorrow's problem? At the time, we used to work with Airbus in Mexico, and we wanted a responsible revolution. And we thought, what are the main revolutions for us? There were two. Social inequalities. So we know that 20% in the world of people have 80% of the wealth. And there was an article recently published saying that this was still the case today, and we thought we have to find a solution for that. And on the other hand, the environmental crisis, which is more and more there, because of the linear model of the Industrial Revolution, which on the one hand has an issue because of resources. We use up a 1.5 planet, that is to say that in 30 years will there be no more gold and then copper and then iron and so on and so forth if we follow the same rhythm. And on the other hand, we produce more and more waste with an economic impact. The World Bank says that every year it's a cost in terms of waste of more than $225 million, and there's an impact on the environment as well. I don't know if you saw this video, but with the current rhythm, will there be more than plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050? And then social as well, because it has a direct impact on 1,000 countries and for us as well. And in France, about 10% of fatalities are due to pollution, in fact, and we thought, so this was when you became aware. Yes, definitely. So we wanted to meet entrepreneurs to see if today we had the solutions to implement this responsible revolution and do so quickly, because change has to be done. So do we have the solution? You'll answer this later. We'll keep the mystery. So for less than 2 years, you went around the world. You went to go and find initiatives and social, economic, and territorial initiatives. And today, your job is to make sure that this network it becomes more prosperous. So we went in 22 countries to meet 150 startups in the northern countries, but also southern countries, because we thought there was a lot of innovation that we were not aware of and that could inspire us. And we thought we want this to last, and we thought we had all the solutions, in fact, to do this revolution. And every time, I mean, we could see startups capturing CO2 and turning into bioplastic, which is cheaper than current plastic. And there was Japanese village sorting their waste in 45 different categories, and we thought, wow, that's amazing. How can we activate these solutions? And on the one hand, we had major companies being aware of these issues, but finding it difficult to go through this transformation. And on the other hand, all the startup and social business that have solutions. So why not make them work together? And now we are facilitators between those major companies and startups to find solutions. So you try to find solutions, and this is your job. So with everything we discovered this morning, are there things on which you would like to react? Something you find striking, or? Well, very briefly, for Michael, well, we are convinced that circular economy has to be global, that is to say, being inspired with as many best practices and sharing experience at international level, in the north or in the south, but also everything has to be done at local level, taking into account resources and culture, and also it has to be local and social. And with this morning's presentation, we can see that if the organization of, the employees organization is interested, this transition will only work if everybody is interested in it. Politicians, citizens, and entrepreneurs, they want to move forward. We had more than 70 conferences in the world. We saw that students and youngsters wanted this change as well. And one of the most advanced countries in terms of circular economy is Holland. Why? Because there are three players: companies, politicians, and citizens. And they carry this stake hand in hand with green deals, for example, that work really well. So they're all going in the same direction, basically. So this is what we said before. Do you have a couple of... So you told us just a few minutes ago so that everywhere in the world there are solutions to make this revolution happen. Just a couple of examples. Well, maybe going back to the challenges you mentioned before. So one of the 5 challenges, well, one of them is the technological one. We are convinced that technology can make huge progress, especially on one issue, which is biomimetics. That is to say, you look at what nature does and you replicate it in your company to increase your social impact. So the wind power in Canada, for example, they looked at how they hunt whales, for example, and they are about 45 tons. And they fish very, very small fish, and in a kind of swell of bubbles, basically. And they wondered how can they do that in terms of energy. And they realized that it came from their fins, in fact. And we thought, how can we do that with wind power as well? And they did it. And now the wind farms that replicate the system in Wales produce more energy and do not make any noise. So with new technologies, you can indeed do incredible things. You have to go and get it, but all the solutions are in nature. This is the perfect circle model. There's no waste. Each waste is used as a resource. So if you can see it as a kind of a library and be inspired from this solution, you can do this revolution. Another 2 challenges as well for the technological aspect. There's a book which was written by someone interesting, and there's 2 challenges. In fact, the first one was all these new technologies, being smartphones, AI, use what we call scarce material, rare material, and you will have to rare earth, if you wish. So we'll have to see how we can use it on the long term. And the other one as well is, these technologies today, if you just look at the internet, 10% of the use of energy at global level. If this energy came from renewable energy, it's interesting. If it's fossil fuel, it's a real challenge. So, this is in terms of technological shock. Going back to another challenge as well is education. So education is one of the challenges, and I saw that in the words we had before, it was mentioned several times. Yes, definitely. So the challenge of knowledge and skills, this is one of the challenges, yes, for responsible revolution. I don't know what you think, but if you look at our education system, you realize that it dates back from the Industrial Revolution. So we've changed a lot of things, but the educational system hasn't changed. So whereas our technologies now make it possible to know that the concentration time is about 50 minutes. So we must have lost half of the room already. And also they're very hungry. So for a child, it's about half an hour. So you have to change the educational model, because this is when it all starts. And kids today will be tomorrow's leaders. So they have to implement this solution. And we have projects on these issues. the Bali Green School, for example, which was elected the greenest school in the world, and considers that basically you have to adapt education to children's curiosity and the need that they have to learn. So you have shortest times. I mean, they study literature, math, and so on, but also they have experiments in the fields for waste management and philosophy. And these kids have got success rates which are rather incredible. So Philippe Vasseur in the introduction took the example of AI. In fact, he said this revolution, responsible revolution, can bring us to the best of the worst of things, in fact, with the example of artificial intelligence. So you confirm that we have, I mean, all kind of situations in the world to go towards the best solution. Yes, I can confirm it, and well, we can confirm it. And when we were in the field, this was the major issue we had. I mean, you hear about solutions, but do we have this solution to evolve towards a 100% sustainable world? And we thought, yes, we do. So the question was, we have these solutions, but why do we not implement them? Why? And there are major themes which were identified. I think Errol mentioned it before, and Philippe Vasseur as well in the beginning. There's an issue with a question of transparency as well. Some lobbies make it difficult to move forward, and we know that some companies as well buy startups and keep the technology before they launch it, basically because of the investment. I'll give you a couple of examples. Financial lobbies in Europe spend about 120 million euro per year, and in the States 3.15 billion per year to prevent progress. So there's a real issue here, and I believe that the EU is working on it and will have to do more on the notion of transparency. The second thing as well is, I mean, we mentioned it with various teachers in South Africa that said the world will not change if you keep the same value indicators. So the main one today is the GDP, which takes into account. Oh, wow. You have somebody who's totally convinced here. But the problem with the GDP is that if you bring more people in hospital, you increase the GDP and the economic growth of your country. But if you don't change this indicator to replace it and to implement others that take into account the social impact, the environmental impact, I mean, the problem is that, for example, I mean, we talk about things, but I mean, it's been more than 70 years and we still haven't done anything. So we're working on this, and what is very positive is that it's a global movement with citizen companies and international organizations, but on this issue. But we'll really have to change this. And maybe the last thing is education. I mean, Nelson Mandela said that education is the strongest weapon to change things, and so, I mean, I'm just calling upon, well, Philippe Vasseur, if we integrate circular economy and the responsible revolution in children, you can change things in an incredible way. And for those who are French, I don't know if you remember, mentioned this example, the classes you had in civic education. Can you remember what you learned? Me? No, nobody can remember. I mean, if you replace this 1 hour by an hour on a responsible revolution, then it could change it all. It could make a real difference. Why not? Let's go for it. So a class on responsible revolution, why not? Philippe, do you want to conclude? Raphaël, you can stay here with us. I think I have a mic.
Bon, l'optimisme responsable de Raphaël.
Wow. Well, the Minister of the Economy of the Bhutan came to the forum a few years ago. So, I mean, we are open to the world, and we're used to it, and we like to do it. So we are completely convinced. I mean, GDP is stupid. It's stupid because the more you destroy, the more you increase your GDP. It's completely crazy. And you take this indicator for a great series of things, and even to see the level of public spending in France and compared to the GDP anyway. So this is you have to change it. It will be part of the suggestions we'll make. So find or integrate CSR in in how we measure growth. So basically, I agree. I mean, education, why not? This is why we put new knowledge and new skills. I mean, if you don't have that, you can never succeed. So I would like to answer on this, and then maybe go back to what I heard before as well. All morning, Errol mentioned before Erain, who's the general director of the national Guy Reiner, sorry. He came at the World Forum, and he was not the head of the EIT at the time, but he was the head of the International Trade Union Confederation. Well, general secretary, whatever. But he's the one that does the job, basically. Usually, the president, I mean, it's a bit like me. For the World Forum, it's not quite the same. But anyway, I just wanted to say that we were concerned right away with this idea that all the stakeholders can say what they have to say, and trade unions as well. And I'm sometimes disappointed because trade unions, I mean, it's usually an attitude which is, I mean, which I understand, obviously, which is defensive rather than prospective. However, as you said, and Didier as well, I mean, the status quo is just not possible. The world will not stay the same tomorrow. So we really have to be worried about it and do something about it. I took a few notes. I mean, it's not because you're scared that the danger will disappear. I mean, it doesn't work like that. It's quite the opposite, in fact. It can worsen the danger. So we need to reassure, that's for sure, and to be able to make sure that together we can remove all types of concerns. And as you said, we have to think of the future of the social protection, and because today everything that's based on employment is gradually being replaced. So we'll have to think of people. But this is a real cultural revolution. I mean, in terms of protection and security, looking at the people rather than the employment. I believe that for us, it's a real phenomenon. And then, just to finish, I believe in the notion of territory. Michael Schumann mentioned it before. The local dimension, I believe in this notion because it's where synergies happen and meetings and when you can establish new policies. This is what we try and do here with what we launched for the third industrial revolution and so on. We have issues, two main ones. The first one is the participation, that is to say that it shouldn't remain, it shouldn't stick to an elite in a way with responsible politicians and entrepreneurs and so on. We have to share it. And the second notion, for my country anyway, is the ability to experiment. I mean, we're stuck. You talk about removing a vertical hierarchy, and we are stuck in models which are ancient, old, and territories. And we said that education was the first industrial revolution. I mean, for me, it dates back to Napoleon. I'm not sure if it was the beginning, but yeah, the beginning of the first industrial revolution, but it still remains in silos and so on. And we should have this ability to experiment more. And if it doesn't work, well, never mind. We'll change, but you should have this ability. In the French law anyway, or we don't have it yet. And then Michael said before, put money where your ideas are. And then he said, invest at local level to create the third industrial revolution. This is what we tried to do here. We create a financial tool to save. I mean, this is an experiment, and we were able to do it, to make it possible for people in this region to save, to create activity and networks. This doesn't mean that you shouldn't look at what is done elsewhere, because if ever the money which is in a place stays in that place, then it means that the richer will always have more capacities than the other ones. So you have to mix with where you put your ideas to make sure that other territories which are not in the same position can benefit from it as well. And then one last thing. The notion of territory, that is to say where you live, when you can act, doesn't mean sticking to yourself and being self-centered. It doesn't mean war between territories. Competition, yeah, okay, that's unavoidable, but what we wanted to do here at the World Forum, and this will be my conclusion, is to make sure that territories can speak to one another, discuss, and as Paul Valéry said, be richer with our differences, and I believe this is the benefit we can have if we share our experiences to do this responsible revolution. Okay, and so all these inspirations and your suggestions will reinforce this declaration, which you will present on Thursday afternoon at the closing session with Michel Serres. So you brought back this demonstrator, you're now creating links. Is it working? Yes. We have a few great success stories, especially one which we did with Accor Hotels, where we went around the world. We analyzed waste produced by hotels, and we tried and find social businesses that could reuse this waste to create added value. And there were issues in India, in Delhi, because people eat in their bed and stain their sheets with Indian spices, so it's very difficult to clean. And hotels used to pay a company that came to collect this waste, and they realized that this company collecting the waste threw the waste in the landfill, and in full there was an impact on the environment and for the company. And in the field, we made a social business called UT, and that a program called Closer Work, in which they had a solution to recover these sheets at a lower cost and to turn them into pads, sanitary pads for women that they distribute in rural areas in India. So for us, it's a free raw material, and for Accor, it's a win-win as well, because they create a social impact and they don't have any more environmental impact. So this is the type of combination that we try to establish between startups and major groups. And what's very positive is that at the beginning we were very much discussing with the CSR management and service and communication, but now it's mainly with the innovation department and strategy department, so you could feel that companies are looking at these issues as well, and this is something which is very positive. It has to go faster, but in any case, it's a strong signal. Thank you very much. Thank you for this positive message. Thank you very much. So, and good luck, by the way. Just a few bits of information for the meetings in the West Forums. So at 150 meters away from here in the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, it's your highest till Thursday. We'll meet again for networking, workshops, Fab Labs, and so on. Everything you registered for is not very far at all. In this room tonight at 5 p.m. we'll have B Corp, which is a great initiative. It's a global approach that's how is now spreading into Europe. We'll explain and we'll prove it this afternoon from 5 to 7, and we'll carry on from 7 to 9 at the Chamber of Commerce and Industry to create commitments. And then tomorrow at 5 p.m. in this room, we'll have the territory approach launched by Rev3, the Third Industrial Revolution. Where are we? And the good news is that it's starting to work in Europe and outside Europe, so we'll have feedback. And then on Thursday at 4:15, we'll have the final declaration and the closing session with our guest, Michel Serres. What did I forget? Could you display Piper's picture if you have it? because he was kind of punished. Oh, look at him. For him. He now fulfilled his mission, but he's now backstage. He's sulking. Well, you'll come and say hi. Well, robots can still be punished. Let's make the most of it. Okay. Enjoy your lunch and have a great World Forum. Thank you very much.